We are here for the love of God. We are here for the love of God to fall into the divine devotion of a heart that longs for one thing and one thing alone. We are here for the love of God. We are here to remember divine wholeness. That we are here to remember the truth of who we are all the way through, all the way through. We are here for the love of God. And the love of God is not your love for God or God's love for you. It is the same. It is to be here so fully present in the longing, where the longing is so alive in the heart, that there is nothing else but the longing of the heart, and a saying yes and yes and yes, without knowing what that is, without knowing what that means. There is a knowing in the heart that there is so much more to this life than the push and the pull and the play of the world. It is about this pull of the heart. This pull of the heart is a divine attraction. It's a divine devotion. It is the divine calling itself into itself. It is a call into the silence of being, into the presence of being, into the presence of your own simple nature. It is incredible grace to be able to recognize the longing of the heart and to feel that pull that is this magnetic force of the divine, pulling, calling. There are so many ways in the play of the life that we resist the ideas of the divine, the concepts of the divine, because we have been offered these partial truths and we have had the idea of the divine mixed up with corruption often in the life. So there can be a resistance to the whole idea of the divine and a casting aside the divine. But the whole purpose of this life is to recognize our own divine nature, to recognize the love that we are. The love that we are is divine love. It is the perfect love, pure love. And we are here to recognize that this love that is pure and perfect, this love is what we are, is who we are. And in order to recognize this love that we are, we will be invited to release the protections and the resistances that can keep us from this remembering, this recognition, from recognizing this truth in our own being, in the innermost being, the innermost heart. So as these words come, it is just about recognizing the recognition of the resonance, of the aliveness. The aliveness is the aliveness of your own presence. The aliveness is the aliveness of your own being. The aliveness is your own consciousness that already knows this truth. And it is in the knowing of the heart that we are carried into this pull, this attraction, this pull into the remembering. The knowing of the heart is where there is this true faith, this shraddha that we speak of, this faith in something that is unknowable, unseen, unfathomable, something that the mind cannot pin a concept upon, because the pull of the heart, it doesn't really know what it is longing for, and it spends the life trying to find what it's longing for in the world of appearance, in the world of experience, and is constantly disappointed. But we will always be disappointed with the external play until we know the wholeness of our own true nature, until we know the wholeness of who we are, of the love that we are. Because it is when we know the love that we are, that we feel the sense of fulfillment that can only come from knowing our own wholeness, that we cannot find that sense of fulfillment in the fragmented world of appearance. We can only find that sense of fulfillment in the knowing of our true essence, nature. So we cannot understand what we are speaking of with the mind, but we can understand it in the language of silence, in the silence of the heart. There is recognition. There is a deep-rooted knowing. And this is the knowing that gives us the faith to say yes to what we cannot comprehend, understand, or see. And it is this faith that is this devotion to that which we cannot fathom. And yet we are so pulled. And the whole reason that we are so pulled is because it is not someone being pulled. It is this magnetic force of the divine pulling itself. And so the feeling of your longing and the feeling of being magnetized to the unfathomable divine, the feeling of being pulled by the love of God and feeling this sense of having this love of God. It is not your love as someone, it is the love of God pulling itself. It is the power of love to attract itself, to pull itself into itself. And it is the naturalness of the open heart to be open to itself and to fall deeper and deeper into itself. And so much of this life is really about seeking out, discovering through the play of life what is protecting and guarding the heart. Because what is protecting and guarding the heart is keeping us from the love that we are longing for. It's keeping us from the love that we are, and it's keeping us from the love of God. The love of God, God and love are exactly the same. It's the same. It's the same as the self. The supreme oneness, Brahman, divinity. We are pulled and we are longing, and the natural force that is inside every heart is this pull to know this truth inside every heart, even if it doesn't seem to be enlivened. It is inside every heart. And that is why it is incredible grace when it is perceived, recognized, and that we can fall into the longing in its purity and stop seeking to fulfill that longing in the external. That we can fall deeply into the longing of the heart without knowing what that longing is for, without knowing where we are being carried. That we can say yes and yes and yes. And that it is the longing itself and the force, the power of true love, of true devotion, of this divine attraction. It is the power of this that carries us, that when we say yes, the divine cannot resist. The divine is attracted to us by our love, by our longing, and will show up in whatever way is needed in order to carry us deeper. Now, sometimes that purification means that that will show up as certain kinds of challenge in the life, as a way of purifying and revealing more deeply, clearing away the dross of the misunderstanding and the misguided ways that we can direct that longing. But it's all one. And so that one is supremely intelligent, wisdom, pure wisdom, and is creating everything out of itself. Everything is being created out of love. And when we are in an open receiving of the play of life, we are in the alignment for, let's say, where there's been a collaboration with conditioning and protection. When we start receiving life and being open to receive the feelings and sensations and release the protections, we're in that divine flow. We're in that flow that is carrying us deeper into the knowing, into the longing, and into the pure devotion, into the recognition that all that is longed for is this. It's as if the longing itself gets purified. The longing itself gets purified so that its one-pointedness becomes so obvious, so clear. So we are here for the love of God, by the love of God. And it does not matter by what name we call that, but let us know that by calling it, by saying yes to it, without knowing what it is, that we are drawing closer, that we are drawing that power of attraction, that pull, that magnetic force. We are pulling that force to carry us deeper into this divine knowing. So that is why the longing is so incredibly profound and is not to be taken lightly or overlooked. To come into the sense of the longing is to be carried deeper and deeper into really what the longing is all about. It starts in the silence, in the simple silence of just being. It starts in the simple silence of just being, in the felt sense of just being here, simply being here. There is an innocence and an openness. There is an emptiness, empty of content. We recognize that there is a fullness in the felt sense of presence, and the fullness is a sense of the aliveness of our own presence, the aliveness of the flow. And we can feel the aliveness. We are opening to the flow of consciousness. We're opening to the alive flow of consciousness flowing within itself, in the knowing of itself. So as we open to the aliveness, we open to that flow. There is nothing to do, nothing to understand. It is just to allow the resonant flow to call itself into itself, to remember itself. And in the remembering of itself, the knowing itself is this blissful nectar. It is a divine nectar that starts to nourish itself. So just to be here in the moment, just to be here and feel the felt sense of the aliveness that is resonant and bright, brilliant, very, very luminous in the knowing of itself. And there is a lightness in it, a lightness that is the openness, the clarity, the innocence, and the purity of this moment, empty of content. Now the content is the moving, changing, and we have been habituated to follow the moving, changing. But the invitation of this moment is to let go of the habit to identify and to allow the attention to rest in this moment. We could say for the identification to be with the presence, with the alive presence, and just to fall in and in and in and be carried deeper into the aliveness and deeper into yourself. There is nothing to do here. It is just to be carried into the silence of your own heart, of being, and to just allow the intelligence of consciousness that knows itself, that is supremely wise, to remember itself, to know itself, to be ignited and enlivened in the remembering of itself, in the innermost sanctuary of the silence of the heart, and to rest here. And in the resting here, there is a nectarine bliss that starts to nourish itself. It is the bliss of being, and the bliss of being is so deeply nourishing. It is more nourishing than 100 years of good sleep. It is so deeply nourishing. It is the nourishment of the divine source, and it is carrying itself, nourishing itself, to recognize more clearly, more pristinely, the knowing of the heart, the true essence nature. So where you recognize the resonance, the recognition of the resonance is in the silence of the being. It's not in the mind, it's not in understanding, it's in the unknown, in the flow of consciousness within itself, carrying itself right into the heart of itself, in the innermost being, where there is this remembering. And where the remembering is alive, the presence is alive. It is just to be here, where the nourishment of knowing yourself is a deep, deep peace, a deep peace, a deep, peaceful clarity. And there is such a pull into this. And it is just to notice how you feel the longing. Let's say the quality of the longing, the power of the longing, the nourishment. Just to notice the subtleties as you are carried deeper into yourself through the resonance that is being carried through this sharing. Now, this sharing, it is not someone speaking to someone else. It is the silence of your own heart speaking to itself, your heart speaking to you. The way that you receive it is not through the words. The way that you receive it is in the resonance of your own consciousness, and the depth of your knowing allows there to be a fineness in what is received. So you receive according to the capacity of the consciousness to recognize itself, attune with itself, and be nourished by itself, right? To take in a deep, deep drink of nectarine bliss. Now, even if there's a sense of that the mind can sometimes come in and try to sabotage and overlay by saying, well, I don't really understand and I'm not getting it, or I'm not exactly what you're speaking about. But it does not matter. All of that is just the mind's sabotaging mechanism, and it's born out of protection. It's born out of a deep-rooted, learned conditioned mechanism in the heart to protect. But do not fear, brave warrior of love, because that mechanism of protection in the heart is softened and melted by the love that is moving in the flow of this grace that is speaking. So it does not matter. You do not need to unguard your heart in a way that the mind might imagine. And your mind can kick up all kinds of protection. But deep in the deep silence of being, there is a flow of love that is more powerful than any fear, any protection, any anxiety. There is a power to this love and this longing of the divine that is longing for you and using its force of attraction from perfect love. It's using its force to call you in and to enliven that pull of the heart. And so in that you feel the gentleness, you can feel certain qualities of it, even if there is a certain dissonance or protection, discordance, also trying to play forward. But in the feelings, the fine feelings of consciousness, the fine ebbs and flows, the pure consciousness, the flows of love are working overtime so hard, so lovingly, so sincerely and committedly to love you into submission, even where you cannot recognize it. So do not fear. Fear nothing, because love is the great power, and love will dissolve all fear eventually into love, because love knows that fear is nothing but love in disguise. It is nothing but light that is in the shadows. But light where there's a shadow is still light. It's still just as bright. That a shadow is cast by protection is not a problem for the for the light of the Supreme, and a little bit of fear and stress that has been held onto, even a lifetime of holding a great big trauma of protection in the heart, is not really a problem for this pure love, this unconditional love, because this love is redemptive. This love is the healing, and the healing comes when love is so openly welcoming you, all of you, exactly as you are, that love is welcoming you, whether you are protected or whether you are wide open, whether you are feeling that the mind is pulling you away, or that you're not understanding, or you're not getting it. It doesn't matter, because love is welcoming you just as you are. And in the depth of the welcome, the depth of the presence that welcomes you just as you are, those places of protection, they cannot help but let go. They cannot help but throw in the towel of defense, because all that those places are longing for is to be one with this love. All that is longed for is for the heart to be wide open and absolutely to be filled brimmingly, shiningly with the radiant bliss of God knowing. Every heart is longing for this truth, whether it knows it or not, whether the words resonate, whether there's a sense of feeling aligned with what is being spoken. It does not matter, because you are included. You are included in the love of God. We are here for the love of God. We are here by the grace of the love of God, in the knowing that there is only the love of God. And the unfolding of a human life is this incredible divine possibility to remember this. Remember this while we have a body. The grace of a human body is that we have this possibility to purify our desires, to purify and clear our protections and conditionings, and to be so wide open that the remembering of God is right here singing in every moment, right here singing in every moment, so that when it comes to the moment to drop the costume, to drop the form, the human body, when it comes to the moment that the knowing of eternal life is here, that love is here, so there is no fear. And the song of the heart is the song of the love of God. And so any kind of transition is smooth and fulfilled. It's fulfilled. The life, the human life is fulfilled, right? And curiously, the whole purpose of a human life is to leave this life with a song of the love of God, blazing in the heart and on the tip of the tongue, and tumbling, even if silently, from the lips, right? So for the love of God, we are here to remember that the love of God is what we are. And it is the love of God that is calling us in. And if we have an awareness, a resonance, an attunement with this kind of longing, then we are so graced by divine attraction. We are so graced that the pull of the heart is calling us. Because when we recognize the call, every moment can be a yes, a yes, a yes, a yes. Every moment is this saying yes to the being, saying yes to love, saying yes to the divine. And we say yes through being in presence, being aware, yes. But we also say yes through the living of life, the embodied living of life, through living life openly, receiving life, receiving all of life, all of the feelings, the whole plethora and gorgeousness, the richness of a life being lived openly, receiving all of the grace, whatever it looks like, that which feels smooth and joyous and easy, and that which feels challenging, so that we can let go of the play of opposites and we can really open to the oneness where there is only God. God sees only God. God doesn't say, oh, this is lovely, this is joyful and pleasurable, and this is a little challenging. God knows only God. Love knows only love, and knows that what is speaking and what is listening is the same glory, the same love, the same brilliance of your heart. And it is all about how deeply it can be received according to how much openness, how pure the consciousness, how ready we are. Now, we cannot try to measure that and bring it into the world of the mind. We cannot evaluate it, analyze it. Well, I am here. This is how much I'm receiving, or this is what I'm not receiving, right? So that mind that says, I'm not getting this, I'm not there, it doesn't really matter because it doesn't actually know. And any moment, the great glory is the heart can blow open with the fullness of God remembering. Any moment, the whole heart can blow wide open with the brilliance and the radiance of the power of God remembering, right? So we're here for this. We're here to bathe and drink in the nectarine bliss of being wherever we are. That whatever the mind is throwing up, however stress is trying to be released, and stress releases through thoughts that can feel like they're sabotaging or not understanding. It's how stress is being thrown up to be released. So we just let it and we welcome it and we say, welcome, 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 love, welcome, God, welcome. Whatever disguise you are wearing, you are welcome here and you are recognized to be one in the light of this sacred truth. You are recognized to be one and holy, however you show up. You are welcome. And there is such a compassionate patience for however you are showing up. And the glory is that as there is a welcoming in the presence, the protections naturally start to soften and fall away. So there is only love, only love, only love. And everyone, everything is fully included in that. How could it not be included in divine wholeness? However, there is a showing up. It is all welcome in the one heart. And so as we come into a deeper recognition of this oneness, this flow, we are drinking in more of the subtle nectar of bliss. We are taking in more of the fragrance, the perfume of love's kiss, right? We're taking it in. We're taking it in. And we are swooning, and there is a softening and a tenderizing in the presence of love. It is as if the places that want to hold on just give themselves up, surrender themselves, step forward, and just take off the armor, step forward naked into the light. And they say, me too. Yes, the recognition is that even the deepest held places of protection, the deepest fears and stresses also belong to this love. So there is such a beauty that is unfolding here, because we're speaking of the love of God, that we are here for the love of God, for the love of God, and for the love of God alone. Now, is that love the love of God that is reaching into your heart and softening those places that are trying to hold on? Or is it that your love, your longing is calling you into the divine heart song, where you are saying yes, and you are singing the names of the divine? And it doesn't matter what those names are and how you are speaking them, in what tongue they are being spoken. It is about the sincerity. It is about the sincerity coming from the longing. You can sing the names silently or write out loud. It matters not. It is the truth and the naturalness of the heart to sing in the silence. The singing in the silence is the freedom of expression, the freedom to love God, the freedom to love, freedom to be, the freedom to be free, right? It does not matter if the words like God and divine, if they don't resonate right now. That's totally okay. It's to attune, not with the words and meaning and concept. It's to attune with the resonance. And if needs be, replace the word with a word that sings in your heart. But essentially, it's about the song of silence. It's the silent song and the resonance that is pure light, pure divine light, that it is singing itself into the remembering of freedom and blissfully nourishing itself into remembering. There is a resonance, and the resonance gets finer and finer and brighter and more brilliant, more radiant, the deeper we fall into the divine remembering. What is the divine? The divine is the purity, the untainted, the immaculate. It is the innocence that has never been tainted or tarnished or disturbed. It is the peace and the bliss that are pure, and have never been anything other than pure. This is what the divine is, divine wholeness. This is what divinity is. This is what Ma is. And so the remembering is in the grace itself. It is in the knowing. And the knowing is where is this faith, that the knowing brings this faith and this courage, this strength and this resolve to keep saying yes and to be in a natural flow of devotion, a divine devotion where we are being called in by the divine natural attraction. Now, when we come into the field of attraction, when we can perceive the field of attraction, we're pulled in, and the attraction it's a force field that's just pulling itself into itself. Now, when we are in conditioning and protection, we are in the field of externalizing. Sometimes that's called aversion or repulsion. It's that energy that's pulling away from the divine. It's protecting, it's pulling away, it's holding and turning away, right? So that's the energetic of protection. It's still consciousness, it's still made out of love, and it is the kind of protection that we have learned, but it's like a repelling. It's not in the field of the magnetic field of attraction, right? It's being pulled away, it's pulling the attention away, it's pulling the energy away, externalizing, protecting, looking in the play of the world, creating more worldly drama, right? And it's saying no to God, no to God's plan, to the divine plan for wholeness, to remember wholeness. It's the egocentric behaviors that's saying my way, my will, protected. Now it's innocent because it's been learned, but only when we are freed enough from this energetic of protection, which essentially protection is like a repulsion, it's an aversion, it's a pulling away. And so that is why it is grace indeed to feel the longing, feel the pull in, feel the whole force field of attraction. It is such incredible grace. And when we are in the field of this grace, we want to be saying yes and yes and yes to that divine devotion, because the protection is saying no and no and no. So there can be a sense of, well, I'm saying yes, but where that protection is saying no, it's like this push pull that we speak of, giving with one hand, taking back with the other. It's that longing for God, and yet that repulsion, that pull away, that fear of God, that anger, that rage, that sense of having been rejected, abandoned, traumatized. You know, we can have learned to have a protection against the divine, very deep. So we're bringing up all of these subtleties that can be in the field, and you will recognize uniquely what might be enlivened as the words come forward. It's never about trying to understand with the mind, of course, but it's about the resonance, and insight will be sparked. And if there's a resonance and a spark, it's not to then go with the mind to try to mine it, excavate it. It's just to be with, in total openness with what is resonating. So we're speaking a lot about the attraction because we want to recognize that every being has this longing in the heart. And really, satsang is about the company, being in with the companions that are lovers of truth, being in the companionship where the love of God is celebrated and venerated and revered, right? It's where the love of God and being a lover of truth, a lover of God, is totally what we are honoring and flowing in and enlivening and diving deeper into. But we also speak of the protection and the ways that protection is holding this energy that acts as a pull away from everything that we are longing for, that our great longing for unconditional love, our great longing for this divine, perfect love and intimacy, this longing for a deep, unwavering peace and a joy, a happiness that is causeless. It's all here in the flow of grace, in the knowing of true nature. And as much as we can be longing for that, we can also be protecting ourselves from it, holding a protection, my will, my protection, my unworthiness, my unlovableness, my concepts, my ideas, all that I've spent this life learning. It's all a protection and an externalizing. And it's the externalizing really of the inner longing. So if we can come to recognize the inner longing and have some degree of letting go into it, some degree of letting go into the longing, into the pure longing, where there's such an openness that welcomes everything in the being, in love. There's a welcoming of all protection. There's a welcoming of those patterns in consciousness that are discordant, that play as repulsion, that play as protection and conditioning. There's a welcoming, but the welcoming has to be into this force field of love, of attraction, right? It has to transmute the repulsion and the protection into divine love, where these patterns, these patterns of repulsion and protection, they just step forward and say, okay, this too belongs in the light. That these patterns recognize their pure essence nature because they're so welcomed. They're so welcomed in this flow of grace, this flow of love, right? So what we're speaking of here, you can perhaps recognize we're speaking of what happens when we feel the feelings. When we feel the feelings and sensations, we open up a pocket of protection, repulsion, the energy of repulsion, of pulling away and protecting. We open it up through feeling the energetic, the energy signature. We open it up to the power of attraction. And as we open it up to the power of love that's pulling itself, it surrenders itself and is transmuted into the remembering of the essence nature. It surrenders into love because that's all that's ever been longed for. So perhaps you can feel this, how this is naturally happening, how this is naturally unfolding. So as these words come forward, the resonance of it carries the remembering. It's the flow of intelligence, of consciousness that recognizes itself in the resonance, in the knowing of the being, and is called deeper into itself, called deeper and deeper into itself, called deeper into the purity of the true one essence nature, that who you are is this purity, this peace, this innocence. And this is where that however deep our protection, however deep our holding patterns, and that energy of repulsion that's pulling away, however deep that is, it's so welcomed into love. And when it's welcomed into love, it can transmute the greatest trauma into the remembering that even the greatest trauma was always love, was always God, was always innocent. Now, these kind of words are very impossible for the mind to understand. And it's only through this divine process that the incredible profundity, that all that has caused our protection in the young life, when we open to it as fine feelings and we bring these protections forward and we're willing to be open to what we want to protect against and meet those feelings and release this needs met structure, the ways that we hold on, when we can really meet these places in love, in presence, we can free these deeply held protections and come to the recognition that what caused our protection was in fact a divine setup to eventually set us free in this lifetime. That all that was traumatic in the young life was a setup to set us free in this life. If we can transmute out of the story, out of the stress and the holding patterns and the pulling away, and we can be attracted in, and we can attract in all of our protections, then we turn everything around and we come to remember the love that we are, the divine that we are. And in the knowing of this, the knowing is that that is all there is. This is what we open to as we release and release and release the protections. That there has only ever been God calling us into God. There has only ever been love calling us into love. We have never been away from this true essence nature, that the whole play of the life has been this whole mechanism of the appearance of creation, purely so that creation can be pulled back into God, that the creation is being pulled back in through this divine attraction. So we have to come to this divine attraction in order to pull back all of our mental projections and all of our ideas about the world and what it is, so that there can be a surrendering of our creation back into God. And in that we can know this truth, and drink the bliss, the divine nectar, can drink the divine nectar of knowing. And the divine nectar is what carries us deeper and deeper in. The saying yes, the saying yes, the saying yes. And the courageous resolve to let go into the longing, to let go into the divine devotion, to fall into that faith, however deeply it is present, that it is precious, precious beyond what can be expressed. But the recognition is the truth of the heart. The recognition is the truth of the heart. Mm. Mm. So we are here for the love of God and to fall into the longing, the love, the incredible grace, to fall into Ma, into the radiant heart, into the being, to whatever capacity. And it is to know that the being is all there is. It never, ever is not here. And it's this recognition that the being is always here, presence is always here, silence is always here, and that as the aware being, aware of the moving, changing, you fall into an absorption through witnessing. You fall deeper and deeper into the absorption in true nature, and attention is attracted back into its true nature, into this divine flow of the love of God calling itself in, loving itself into utter submission. Mm. It does not matter by what name we call this, for it is not about the name. It is always about the resonance. So whatever name we call this, it carries a resonance. So you are attracted to maybe a certain name by the resonance. The great glory is that the resonance is always the same, right? The resonance of truth is the same. It is always about the resonance and about the light. It is being one with the resonance. And the resonance is like a vibration, a frequency. And it is attuning to this resonance. And the resonance is light. It's light, it's divine light, whole light. the aliveness of the resonance is the power. And it's the power of attraction. It's the power of this devotion, of pure devotion. That is why, as we say yes and yes and yes, or we repeat the name, the names, this is why that resonance is a flow of attraction. This is why chanting, kirtan, bhajans, this is why it brings forward such a feeling of devotion if the heart can let go. In a way, it's the most profound way, a profound way for the heart to open, because there's an ability to feel the resonance and to let go, to really let go, let the divine just move through the heart, right? To be completely absorbed in that devotion, in that divine, without any understanding. Now, often we can have a certain amount of guarding to start with, where we don't just let it fly. But it's a profound way to wear down the protection, because that resonance of the divine that is in the chanting of the names it's the divine resonance. It's the one with no second, right? And so it's calling itself in. And of course, that will appeal more to some beings than to others, but it can be incredibly profound. And that is why it's the power of the pure devotion, the power of attraction, which is like bhakti, right? It's a bhakti. Divine surrendering into itself, into itself, into itself. But the incredible grace in this life is that at some point we, in this unfolding, we all have to open to the bhakti, because it's the pure devotion. We cannot know God without this depth of devotion. We cannot know Ma without this depth of devotion. Mm-hmm. And of course, the repeating of any name, it's not external. That's why it's about the resonance, is that it's not about laying that devotion outside of yourself. It's about the resonance is this self-sustaining, pure devotion that's carrying you deeper and deeper into the resonance. And that is why with the speaking or the chanting of divine names, where the energy builds, that there's more and more of an uninhibited letting go of convention and holding, and just being carried into the divine. Now, we don't have to be chanting to be carried into the divine, not at all. But for the ones that are pulled, it's beautiful. It's very, very beautiful. It is just to follow the longing and the resonance of the longing and the resonance of the recognition, to follow the resonance of the recognition and to feel the fine feelings. Feel the fine feelings, the subtlety, the subtle perception of the being, of the intelligence, of the consciousness. Feel the aliveness. Doesn't matter which words resonate more, but just to keep attuning and falling deeper in to the aliveness, the longing, because this is where this force field, this flow of divine attraction is moving by grace into itself. So we are here for the love of God, to uplift and to uplift the whole frequency, resonance of the field, to uplift and to transmit this finer frequency, because this finer frequency uplifts the whole of humanity, uplifts the whole, because there's only one, right? So the more that we are resting in this finer and finer frequency of divine wholeness, that resonance is rippling, reverberating into the whole field and uplifting the whole. So resting here in the fine resonance of being yourself, drinking in the nourishing nectar of the bliss of being yourself, the bliss of being one with the divine wholeness. Recognizing that attention is absorbed in itself, can still have subtle awareness of things that might be moving and changing, but attention is absorbed in itself. And when attention is absorbed in itself, identification is no longer with the mind-body, but with the being. And here the being recognizes itself. It's very clear that who you are is not limited to being a person with a name and a story, that who you are is the being, the divine being that is ever deepening into a clearer and clearer knowing of your immaculate nature, deep in the silence, deep in the stillness, is this aliveness where the being knows itself. And where the being knows itself, that knowing is the flow. It's a flow of consciousness flowing within itself to know itself. And here, the appearance of creation rises out of this knowing, right out of the silence. But it is to rest here, watching the appearance, and not start walking into the story, right? Because as we walk into the story, if we are in protection, then we are in these energies of holding and this repulsion that we're speaking of, right? Protection and conditioning. If we are resting and watching, just watching and receiving, then we are ushering creation, our created, projected world. We're ushering it back into the flow of divine wholeness, where the protections collapse into divine love, where everything is transmuted into the remembering of divine love. on a certain level, as we are resting deep in this, we could say that nothing ever happened, that the story never happened. And this is the truth. What we are speaking of is so that for wherever you are in this unfolding, you can find your way out of the Maya, out of the ways of protection and into the flow of divine attraction. Once you find your way into the flow of pure devotion and divine attraction, there's a clearing up of the residue of the protections, and essentially it's inevitable that the knowing of God will come online, because you're in the flow of attraction, right? And the protections will be cleared up, and the knowing is that it's in the openness that's receiving life and watching the appearance, that you're not creating more projected stories out of the stories and protections and patternings, right? That you're pulling all that patterning back in to the flow of divine devotion, into this flow of attraction, loving itself into submission, right? So the deeper that we come in here, yes, we come to recognize that nothing ever happened, that is impossible, and in the mind it can create a repulsion, right? It can create an energy of fear. Fear is a repulsion, right? It can create that. So we don't try to understand that with the mind, but in the being, nothing has ever happened to the pure, immaculate being that you are. Nothing has ever happened. And we're collapsing the story that keeps pulling the attention. We're collapsing that whole patterning of repulsion and protection back into the remembering. And then we're back on track. We're back on track. We're back in the divine devotion, in the flow, in the saying yes, falling in and in and in. And yes, the process clears up what needs to be cleared up, right? This is what is in process. So we can just say, well, nothing ever happened, nothing ever happened, nothing ever happened, right? We can just keep speaking the truth. And at some point, it will be received, the resonance will be received. But the way that we're speaking about it, well, it's an offering from the divine. This way of speaking about it is an offering from the divine. It is a way. It is a way, and it is the way of love. It is the way of surrender. It is the way of the heart, out of the illusion, and to really clear up, really clear up, so that the seeing is not abstract, but that the knowing of this truth can be fully lived. Total freedom, right? This is the offering of the divine. What incredible grace. For the love of God and for the love of God alone, we are here. We are here now.